Welcome to the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. My name is Terrence Mentor, and I'm a digital marketer who's realized that since this industry is constantly changing, we need to be constantly learning. And I think the best way to learn all of the things we need to learn is to talk to the people who are doing all of those things. So this podcast is really just a chance to do just that. For this first season of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast, I've interviewed 5 of South Africa's top digital marketers about their careers, what they think of the state of the industry right now, and most importantly, what advice they have for someone looking to improve their digital marketing skill sets. One of the huge benefits of digital marketing is the mass of information it gives us about our potential customers and audiences. In this episode, we talk about how these insights and intuition interact with each other to create campaigns that are creative while also being informed by data. Our 5 experts each gave their thoughts, starting with John O'Dogood.
Hey, I'm John O'Dogood. I work at R17 Ventures, an international performance marketing agency, working from the beautiful city of Cape Town, working with clients from across the globe. And I currently work in helping businesses grow to achieve growth through customer acquisition or retention, and really helping them build and scale their brands as quickly as possible.
How much does intuition and creativity engage with that versus just purely looking at the numbers and running by the data? Are you more informed by data or by that kind of creative gut that so many marketers have?
We're totally informed by data, but what we do is heavy testing. So testing is part of our DNA. And so we do a lot of testing. We test hooks, we test certain styles of image or video, different messaging, different audiences, etc. So there's a lot of testing that goes on. In fact, we dedicate a certain amount of budget just towards testing. And then and every test also has a hypothesis. So we say, this is the hypothesis. Are we going to prove it or disprove it? If we're able to prove it, we move on to the next step and move on to the next step. And it's really about coming down with a solid plan of action and then being able to iterate on that.
Doesn't that feel like a very expensive or resource intensive way of looking at things? Because, like you say, it's testing upon testing, you're refining and then testing. Why is that the direction that you feel is the better way of going?
Yeah, look, I think for a lot of our clients, they are looking for growth, and they're looking for growth very quickly. And so for us, that's the best way to do it. It's about finding what works. And as soon as you know what works, you can put a lot of money behind it because you know that it works. So it's really about scaling. You have a learning phase and a learning budget, which is dedicated fully just to learning. But then you've got the rest. That's all about scaling and growing and just doing minor tweaks and updates, etc. Obviously, I would say there is some intuition involved to an extent as part of, when we're putting together hypotheses that we want to test. I mean, a lot of it is data-led, but in the same breath, a lot of it is, we've seen this work for someone else, should we try it? And I guess one of the great things about having, a whole bunch of clients is that we also get to see what works with other brands within our own stable that we're working on. And we're able to then test and iterate and try and work out if it can work for other companies as well. It's about finding that framework and getting that framework up to date. And I think you lose a lot less money in the long term that way. But again, you also need to have some kind of runway. So I think if you are bootstrapping and it's month to month that your company's going, you're living from month to month, it becomes very difficult. But if you've got, R500,000 that you can dedicate just to getting it right, finding the right formula, and then, we really scale, that's where the real magic happens.
I'm Michelle Marie. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. I am currently completely remote. I do go into the Cape Town office every now and again, but really it's a work from home, fully remote role. The company that I work for is Online Travel Training, which is a UK-based digital training platform aimed at the travel trade globally, but also the core focus for their marketing is the UK market, the UK travel trade market. So it's a little bit more about me. Analytics and data are valuable, and there is nothing that can dissuade anyone of that. but they're only one component of a larger marketing arsenal. It's just the beginning of the marketing story. Data is really effectively about people who are driven by their emotions. So purely data-driven marketing decisions really take away from the distinctiveness of your brand, the brand personality. Um, the challenge is that target audience data is the same everywhere. If you are part of a parity market, as I am within travel, you're really talking to the same audience as your competitor. So if you only factor in the data, you completely lose the personality of the brand, which is obviously human driven rather than data driven. Um, the the intuition, if you will, is what makes your audience feel connected to your brand. Um, it's but then again, intuition and gut feeling isn't enough on its own. So, from my perspective, you absolutely should be constantly A/B testing, constantly making your decisions scientifically as a base point. But how you execute your campaign to your audience, how you make it relevant, how you make it personal, should absolutely be more intuitive, bolted on to the base information.
I love that, and maybe I should change my question, because using the word people, I think, is important. Maybe when you get too into the weeds of all the metrics and everything that you could measure, you forget that those are human beings behind every click, behind every engagement, and we're really talking to them. So trying to keep in mind the human behind all of that is a big step.
Just to add on to that, in terms of analytics, I know that this meme has been circulating all over the place. But if you put Ozzy Osbourne and Prince Charles into an analytics basket, uh, typically they're of the same age, they're white males. Analytically speaking, they are identical. And in terms of big data approach, the kind of content that you would send to both would look the same. Where intuition comes into the mix is my audience Ozzy Osbourne, or is my audience Prince Charles? How I approach that content creation, how I approach the design of the content that I'm sending out there, how I approach the personalization of the copy will be whether I know I'm talking to Prince Charles or whether I know I'm talking to Ozzy Osbourne. And those would be two very different things. On data alone, it would land completely flat.
So it does really feel like you're people first and informed. This is what you said earlier, so I'm just replying.
No.
Informed by the data. No, the other way around.
Yes,
Data
yes.
informed by people.
No,
Okay.
no. People first. However, everything built on an understanding of the data first. You need to take that data, you need to work with it. However, how you translate that into campaign execution, absolutely the people first. And you should know your audience before you send anything out anyway. Relevance, it should be on point to that set of personalities.
I think in a later season, I definitely want to spend at least one whole episode, potentially even a whole season, just talking about data analytics and metrics, because there's a lot of alphabet soup with that that you can get lost in the weeds in, and I think it'll be great, especially for younger digital marketers to hear, like, actually, this is the one metric. Like, forget about everything else. This is the one metric that I measure and that I care about more than anything.
But Terence, there is no one metric. It really,
I want there to be one metric. It'll be so much easier if there was.
What do you want to achieve? What do you want as your KPI for a campaign? Or in an agency environment, what does your client expect as the KPI? What looks like success for your client in an agency context? You cannot take this basket of analytical KPIs and say, this is absolutely the be all and end all of metrics, and we're all going to report on the same thing in the same way forever. No, it doesn't work like that. Is my call to action a conversion? Is my call to action somebody downloading a white paper? Is my call to action simply that you're going to go and view a page on my website? How I deal with each of those, while the click itself is valuable, what happens post the click? And that determines the success of the campaign. And that's what do your stakeholders want to consider success? What do your clients consider success? There isn't a one size fits all. I'm so sorry.
But this is why we need to study. This is why we need to learn, and we need experience to know the difference, right? Like, yes. I guess that's where, because you could go on a 6-week course and they could say customer acquisition is the most important metric. That's what all sales is about. So just focus on that. Then after maybe 10 years of experience, you realize that at different points in the funnel, there are different metrics, and knowing what is the most important
Absolutely.
thing.
And even in terms of remarketing, how do I recapture? If somebody has jumped out of the funnel because at that point they're not interested, at what point can you bring them back in? How do you remarket? Where do you remarket? What is your product or service? I think that's really the fundamental initial question, because how you remarket to them, whether they purchase or don't purchase, whether they convert or don't convert. Again, one size doesn't fit all. If you take any client or any product or service, each one is completely individualized, and those audiences to each of those products and services are completely individualized. They may be underscored by big data, but again, how you approach them is absolutely defined by so many variables.
So my name is Alex Overmeyer. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa, born and bred here, worked remotely here too. What I do is digital marketing. I am self-employed, and then I work for quite a large range of businesses. Most of them are based in the UK. Currently onboarding some from the US as well, and then I have 1 or 2 in South Africa. And then while building those brands, I also build my own brand, which is a digital marketing team, and then as well as a health marketing platform. I think that basically sums it up. And in terms of like my speciality in digital marketing is basically the full customer journey. So, whatever interaction the customer has with the business online, that's kind of where I am.
How does data come into play with making those kinds of decisions and helping you inform your clients about the steps that they should take? Is there a lot of data that you use, or is it more creative and intuition?
I would love to say intuition, but unfortunately marketing doesn't really work that way, as with everything else in life where they say trust your gut. But for me, it's always a combination of the creativity as well as, the metrics, the numbers. Those two sort of work hand in hand. I don't make decisions, without looking at the numbers. So I'm a very creative person, but in this space, I've had to learn to work with numbers, and trust me, that is something I never wanted to do, was work with numbers. But if you're not working with numbers here, you don't know what your customers are enjoying or not. And so if I'm creating content and I'm looking at past stats of, analyzing where were there more clicks, where was there more engagement, and those numbers will then tell me what kind of content I should and should not create going forward. They also tell you a lot about the customer and about what they enjoying about their brand, or what decisions they're making, or where the limitations are, in terms of your website. If it's, you look at the time spent, those are numbers, is that if they spending a little time there, is there a problem on the thing, or is spending too much time there, is there a problem, or how many sessions, there's so many things we have to analyze and look at numbers. So yeah, that's definitely, it's key to making marketing decisions.
but there is that little bit of intuition where, for instance, if the time spent on the page isn't quite right, you sometimes need a little bit of creativity to figure out what the issue is, because there's no red flag saying this is the problem of the year, it's this button. Sometimes it does require that. I do think that people have like this, maybe Mad Men was the worst thing that could happen to marketing, because they just see people like on the fly coming up with these creative campaigns that just magically work every single time. But as we was talking about earlier, you can't make the best brief possible. You can't make the best campaigns possible if you don't understand the audience, if you don't understand the customer. And like you're saying, the data helps you get to know your customers better. So I agree with you, though. If only that wasn't true, because crunching numbers is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I took maths lit in high school, and I went to multiple maths lessons after high school. It was not my strongest point.
I'm Senzo Matigane. I am based in Johannesburg, and I am currently the marketing manager for First Car Rental.
If I can get a little bit nitty gritty with you about some of the work that you do, in particular, I'm someone who sees the power of data and reporting, but I really err on the side of intuition and gut feel and creativity. So for me, if something looks and feels good, even if the data doesn't back it up, I tend to go in that direction. How does using data, how does that show up in your day-to-day work? Is that something that you work with regularly to inform your work?
Definitely. I think in order to create campaigns that resonate, you need to know what is important to your target audiences. And also, people are not homogenous. So not everybody's the same. The 17-year-old, or at least not the 17-year-old, but the 24-year-old isn't necessarily thinking about the same thing as a 36-year-old, for example. But you need to be able to be crafting messages that speak to these two very different groups of people who are also presumably at very different stages of their lives. So I think data helps to give you a picture of, or at least the landscape of within which we are working in. But intuition then informs what will work and what doesn't.
When do you know when to take a chance on creatives? Is that just something that you get with experience, where you go, this is something we've never done before, we don't have data to back it up, but we're going to give it a go, even if it takes a bit of budget? Is that something that you're brave enough to do sometimes?
I don't know, actually. That is probably the most honest answer I could give you, because there are so many factors that come attached to quote unquote the bravery or the brave act in terms of campaigns that aren't necessarily always in your control. So as much as I would possibly want to take the risk, I'm part of an organization, and there are most likely processes in place that will most likely override me if the majority of the people feel that the risk isn't worth it. So I think the simple answer to that question is I don't know.
Cool. So I'm Abby Kluti. Some can say Kluter, doesn't matter. I'm from Cape Town, still residing in Cape Town, and I am currently a digital strategist for an NGO called the Zero Dropout Campaign.
Is that work more informed by the data that you're getting out of the digital marketing space, or is it more your own gut, your intuition, just working from the experience that you have? You did mention earlier that sometimes analytics isn't always your jam. So
yes.
where does data and intuition and gut kind of play together?
It's definitely a bit of it's always going to be a mix of both of them. And I'm learning that it comes with experience, also knowing when to dive into analytics, when it's important, and when you kind of just have to feel out your audience and see like what's been going on. Are people quiet? Are people up in arms about this particular issue? Like, where does it make sense to post now? It's in the middle of an election. Tensions are high. Should we be posting political things? Like, it's just all of those things that you kind of need to be informed about, I would say. And then based off of that, you can decide, okay, you can devise a strategy and say, okay, maybe this type of messaging will work well for our audience on Facebook, and they will appreciate it, they will engage with it, they will share it. Then maybe we just do a post on Facebook, and that type of, it's just that kind of awareness. I think that's something I've learned also within my career, is that it really helps when you know who you're speaking to, who your audience is, and who is behind the phones and reading and scrolling past your content. It's important to know who those people are. Whether I would say the demographics are maybe not that important, but just knowing the people and their background. Who are these people? And if you know that, that will kind of help you make better decisions, I would say, when it comes to post or to any content, basically any content, I would say.
So taking that data, the bits of data that you can get access to, and
yes.
putting it into like a bit of a magic potion
yes.
that then hopefully works. And if
yes.
it doesn't, then you know that potion isn't the right one
and I think
for
that's
you.
also the beauty with content and content creation, is that you never really know if this is going to do well or not, and it's always going to be a gamble. So like once you make, like, maybe your managers understand that, like, things will work okay, and there's room for improvement. There's constant, things are changing every single day, so there's always room to improve. You can go and edit your post, it's fine. We can boost it tomorrow, it's fine.
Or we can just delete it quietly and
yes.
maybe just try again next week, and hopefully no one notices.
An article about the fact that you removed the post, it's fine. It's not gonna we're saving PDFs, not lives. I saw that on TikTok the other day.
A big thank you to Jono, Michelle, Alex, Senzo, and Abby for their insights. And a big thank you to you for listening to this episode of the SA Digital Marketing Podcast. Remember, in each episode, we'll tackle a question that you might have if you're thinking of starting or improving your career in digital marketing. If you're listening on Spotify, please leave a comment in the app and I'll respond to you there. Otherwise, you can send your thoughts, opinions, and questions to podcast@tmdigital.co.za. That's podcast@t4tango, m for mother, digital.co.za. And of course, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. Thank you so much. This was the SA Digital Marketing Podcast.